Hey everybody, this is Will Johnston from Hyatt Training. With the quarantine going on, pretty much everybody's working at home, away from their normal standing desks or ideal workspaces, and they're maybe working at kitchen counters. They're maybe sitting on couches using laptops, and we're watching Netflix, we're reading books. Maybe we're getting some yard work done around the house, but those are a lot of things that are gonna tend to leave us feeling kind of internally rotated, maybe tighten the neck, tighten the back, tighten the hips and glutes, sore low back, all sorts of stuff like that. So today we're gonna go through a few different exercises and mobility movements that should help you feel loosened up and a lot better than you did before. All right, so I've got kind of a typical makeshift home work desk kind of setup. It's basically a kitchen table and I got my laptop at it. Now, when we're using a laptop at a desk like this, we're gonna be looking kind of down, and a lot of us kind of just start creeping in as we work, and we're starting to rotate inward, and our neck's kind of jammed forward in an unnatural position. So what we're gonna do as that tightness builds up is we're gonna take our neck and kind of push it back to where it should be. And I'm gonna sit up nice and straight, and I'm gonna think about my ribs pointing down at my hips, not either arching forward or slumping like that. Now, when I'm in that position, I'm gonna take my head and I'm gonna pull from the opposite side like this, gently, and I'm gonna kind of resist that tension. So I'm gonna push upward into my hand at the same time. And as I kind of pull my shoulders down and back, I feel a really big stretch all the way through the neck, down into my traps, because I, like a lot of people, have really overactive traps. So I'm getting to hold that nice stretch for about 30 seconds per side, maybe 45 if it feels really good. Then what I'm gonna do is go back to neutral, switch to the other side. Then I'm gonna do about 8 rotations in each direction, making circles with my head just to kind of loosen up a bit. So we're gonna hold about another 10 seconds because I've been talking a while on this one. That'll start getting you limbered up at the neck. And then you can kind of take the next step into some ground-based movements and then some further exercises from there. All right, so before we move down to the ground and work on a couple different exercises, movements, and release points, we're gonna do something real quick for our pecs. The pecs tend to get a little bit involved in that internal rotation that I was talking about, so things can be a little tight here. Sometimes when you're tight on the anterior muscles, delts too, that can prevent movement from moving easily into an overhead or lateral position as well. So that can kind of contribute to that jammed up feeling. What we're gonna do is go through 2 to 3 different positions and then 5 to 8 movements of the joint when we're in that position. We're gonna put this guy in the rack. You could either use an mobility ball if you have them, or you can use a regular lacrosse ball too. The only downside of the lacrosse ball is it can kind of roll around a little bit. So you just gotta be more careful about where you put the pressure to keep it from squirting out on you to the side or something like that. So I'm gonna use this guy, I'm gonna put it in the rack, I'm gonna look for a couple different spots that feel tender, and then I'm gonna go through some pressing movements and some overhead extension type movements while I have that intense pressure. The goal is as intense a pressure as you can tolerate. That's gonna be different for every person, but it should feel kind of like when you're getting a really intense massage with any of this mobility stuff. You want it to be intense because intense is gonna be effective quicker. You don't wanna spend 45 minutes doing this, you wanna spend like 5 minutes doing this. You're gonna hug yourself into the rack and then go through the movements, creating the pressure. If you don't have a rack to use because you're not in a garage gym, you can use your door frame or something like that. Repeat on the other side and you're good. All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're going to a overhead mobility movement with the mobility balls, or you could use a lacrosse ball. You would need 2 if you're gonna do it with a lacrosse ball, just like you do with the mobility balls. What you wanna do in this movement is you wanna take the mobility balls and you wanna go just below your scapulas, right in between your scapulas, and then the final position up by your traps. You're kind of placing them around your spine with your spine running down the middle of the balls. What you're gonna do is put yourself in a slight glute bridge when you're in that position. First you find that, there you go. Put yourself in a slight glute bridge. You're gonna clasp your hands up overhead, and then you're gonna bring the hands up overhead with your breath held, exhaling down in the snow angel pattern. You're gonna take another breath here, breathing into your diaphragm, and repeat. You're gonna do that 5 times to 8 times in each of those 3 positions. So just below the shoulder blades, in the middle of the shoulder blades, and then up by your traps. After you do that first position, move it up to the next and repeat. All right, next thing we're gonna do is gonna be a little bit of foam rolling for our lats, kind of the big wingy muscles back here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take our foam roller, or if you have it, an AccuMobility roller. I like these guys because of the big pressure points. It kind of gets you a little more trigger point massage kind of feeling out of this, but a foam roller will totally work fine. The other benefit of this guy is that it's a little bit higher up. So when you're doing an area like your lats, it's a little bit easier to get into that space. But a foam roller, you're just gonna be a little bit closer to the ground. You're gonna have to be a little bit more careful about how you put your pressure down into it so that you get what you want out of it. What we're gonna do is just gonna kind of press up into a hip bridge here, and we're gonna roll back and forth with our arm extended. Right there, I kind of feel a pretty rough spot in my lat. So usually, if I find something that's a little gnarly, a little spicy, I'm gonna get in there, and then when I find it, I'm gonna dig into it just a little more, and I'm gonna move through some articulations as much as I can. Obviously, you can't move your arm in complete ranges of motion on a roller, but go through a little bit of internal and external rotation, a little bit of flexion and extension, and go about 30 to 60 seconds on each side, and you'll be feeling a little bit better. Last thing we're gonna kind of hit on the ground is a little bit of work for the hips and the glutes. So you're gonna do the same kind of principle that we did with the pec release. You're gonna put this in a few different areas on the hip flexor, the side of the hip, and work your way back to the glutes. Now, if you're doing it with the AccuMobility ball, you're gonna hunt and peck for different spots, and you're gonna go through your movements there. If you're doing it with I don't know where my lacrosse ball went, right here. If you're doing it with a lacrosse ball, you're just gonna smash everything is the general term that we would use for that. So with a lacrosse ball, that's gonna look a little bit more like something like this, where you're getting it into position. I usually start on my side and get into that hip really good, because that's usually my biggest weak area. But if you know that there's a spot that you're gonna need the most attention to, go there first. So you smash it out nice and good, and then at this point, you can still kind of do what you would do with an AccuMobility ball. So I'll show you right now with the lacrosse ball, and then I'll switch over to the AccuMobility ball for my glutes. But you're just gonna kind of balance in that spot, just like we did with the foam roller on our lats. You're gonna find a spot that feels pretty intense. And then you're gonna move through some articulation of that leg at the hip joint, going through some flexion and extension, almost like you would in a squat or a lunge or something like that. As you do that, you're gonna feel the pressure intensify. So just go with it as hard as you can tolerate for 5 to 8 reps each location. I'm gonna go to a different location. I'm gonna go to my glutes now, a little bit more towards the back. I'm gonna find something that feels kind of gross, not quite there. There it is. And now that I got something gnarly, I'm gonna go through a little bit more of that work. So 5 to 8 more reps. Repeat on the other side. You're gonna feel a lot different when you stand up. All right, so we just spent some time going through some pressure point releases for your muscle groups and some different stretches that should leave you feeling better than you felt before. Instead of just going straight back to your desk, you're gonna be in that same position again and you're gonna get all tight again. Let's just do a few different body weight movements, and if you have it, a resistance band that you can utilize after this video. Put them in a circuit 3 to 5 times through or something like that. It should only take you 5 minutes. You can do it a few different times a day if you like, and that's gonna help give your muscles a reason why we loosen them up and a reason to stay mobile and feeling good instead of just being in that same position all day. We're gonna go through a bodyweight squat, a band pull apart, a alternating lateral lunge, a band over and back, and an alternating rear lunge. All right, so I'd say just do each movement about 5 to 8 times and repeat the circuit 3 to 5 times if you have the time to do it. These are tough times for all of us. We're not able to go to the gym. Our sense of community is a little in disarray right now. We're used to seeing each other every week and being able to check in while we're getting a good sweat and working out some of the anxieties that go on with this kind of event. So it's really important that we all stay in touch. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I hope it makes you feel good to get up and get moving a little bit throughout your day. I hope you guys stay safe out there and be well.